So, bibliomancy is a form of divination wherein you use books to almost as an oracle. Well, not almost, as an oracle, right? So you're using a book as an oracle. And this is an old system, right? If you think about the I Ching is essentially bibliomancy. You are casting a hexagram in order to get to a particular passage in the Book of Changes, right? In order to get your message. So yes, there are things that you can do with a hexagram as well, but the individually as in its lines and things and breaking it down into trigrams, but the main source is to get to the oracle that is found in the book. We also saw this in early fortune-telling books where you would draw a playing card to get you to a page in a particular book. I pulled a couple more of these to show you. You would have things like this Lady's Oracle also, where you would use pages in a certain way to be able to tell what page to go to get your answer. You can see there are modern versions of this with the Magic Oracle book here. I actually accidentally got two of these, which worked out in my favor for this what we're going to talk about today, but this has a whole bunch of quotes in it so that you can be asking a question, asking a question, asking a question, asking a question, and then, okay, I'm going to read this quote, I'm going to get a message out of it. So there are modern books that sort of set you up for that as well. Ask Your Question, Find Your Fate Oracle book, something similar here with quotes. Ask your question, ask your question, ask your question, ask your question. Okay, be silent to let them each hear each other breathing for a moment, mouth to mouth. Be quiet. Listen. Listen so carefully that you can hear the breath of the other person. This isn't a time for you to be speaking or over speaking somebody. Stop and listen, right? And you get your message by doing that. This one I think had a spinner. I don't know if it still has it in here, but there's different ways in which you can come to your answer with Titanias, and there's questions and then there's answers sometimes, and the older books especially had a question, and if you pick from a list of questions and then get your answers that way. And so for myself, if you follow my Instagram, especially, you've probably seen I've used the Aesop Fables a lot with my John Bower tarot. So I particularly love to use these because these are little short fables, and so they work really well as bibliomancy. And so, what's your question? 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 Okay, I'm going to read the story of the thieves and the cock. And then I will pull often a tarot card or something to go with what I have pulled, or you can just pull for the bibliomancy. So Aesop's Fables works really well for that. I actually want to get a different, I might use this for my book that I'm going to be showing you in a minute and get a different version that lays a little bit more flat, but that is one of my favorite things to this is probably my most used bibliomancy book. I also really love this Nocturnal. So poetry works amazing. So I have the collected works of Emily Dickinson. I've used this a lot for bibliomancy. The collected poems of Yeats for bibliomancy, and then this is a very, very special book for me, the Best Loved Poems of the American People. This was a book I grew up reading. My dad's copy, I stole his copy and had it for years, and then my dad in looks like 1989 got me a copy of my own so that he could have his back. And so I love to use this book for bibliomancy. Again, you would just be looking, you might even grab just a specific, drop your finger where it is, and it's not the whole poem that's necessarily a message, but that stanza that is the message. So for me, poetry works amazingly for bibliomancy. So And I love, this is a more modern book, but this is Nocturnal by Wilder, and it's just gorgeous. And this is an amazing one to use for bibliomancy as well. My probably most used right now are these two, although I've done a lot with Emily Dickinson. I've done a lot with this in the past. But for the most part, I tend to use poetry and or something like this where it's short fables that can go, that you can just kind of grab what that message is and what that meaning is there. So bibliomancy is divining or gaining an oracle through finding a particular passage in a book, however you might do that. Now, the point of this, though, is that love it, right? This is something that I really enjoy. Clearly, I collect these types of books, and these are, again, this stays by this and this right now, and this. These stay in the drawer next to me where I keep, you know, things like this, because these are the ones that I pull from the most. These have, you know, go on sort of a poetry shelf, and then these I don't really use these as much for actual bibliomancy, but this is something that I really enjoy. So I was getting ready to do my next class, and one of the in my Tales classes, which is more of like a literature class where we're reading a particular book and working our way through the book, but we also do divinatory things. In this case, we are reading The Highland Witch by Susan Fletcher. But one of the things in that class is that we're always doing projects. So for example, I already made a little oracle deck to go with. Sometimes we've done little casting things. People do all different things. They tell you know, they write stories, all different kinds of things. Well, my friend Jaime was talking about her project that she was going to be doing for this upcoming class. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's an amazing idea, and I'm going to steal it. And she's like, well, that was sort of my point. And she's not the first friend to say this to me, where like I'll just kind of feed this information to Kelly, because Kelly's crazy brain will go nuts on it, and that will also help me to process through the idea and or get ideas or options that I might think up that maybe they didn't think of. So yeah, I see you, Miss Jaime. I see you and I hear you. So yeah, threw me down a rabbit trail. I do like to have a couple options of like, okay, here's some ideas of you know, things that you can do. And so, you know, it worked fine, but she threw me down a rabbit hole. Anyways, but it's an appropriate rabbit hole because the book is very much centered around the understanding of the power of words. And so to make a bibliomancy book of your own makes sense. So here's a picture of what this said rabbit trail has looked like all week, as I have been waiting for what the binder that I'm going to try to use for this project came in. I was gathering up pages, as you can see on this table. So far, these are the books that I have pulled from. I'm not done by any means. Some of them I had, like this is actually a duplicate. I had purchased this again around Christmas time, thinking that I didn't have it. I was like, oh, that's really awesome. I like to collect these types of books, and I already had it, and by the time I realized I already had it, it was past returning it. But it's ended up being perfect because these are all quotes, and so quotes are fantastic for bibliomancy, so I could take a big chunk of pages from this book. So I pulled from this book. Some of them I scanned the particular pages that I wanted and printed it out on my computer because I didn't obviously want to damage the book. So I have a couple pages from A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. I have some pages that I scanned and printed from What the Heart Knows, which is an amazing poetry art book that my friend Patrick gave me for my birthday one year, by Joyce Sidman. I actually pulled a couple things from Women Who Keep the Lights. I pulled a couple pages from The Way of Weird, from The Power of of myth. These are ones that I have pulled pages from. Again, some of these I didn't cut out. This one I cut out a couple pages from The Watership Down, only because I have so many copies of this, and I ended up putting all of my notes. I have my original copy, and I also have a beautiful illustrated copy that I put all of my notes in, and so this kind of became redundant. So I used this there. So I've pulled a couple of pages from that. I pulled from Treasury of Favorite Poems. This was an interesting one. I actually wanted, this had some quotes in it. It's a magazine, and it had some beautiful quote pages, and so I pulled, and that put some color in as well, so I pulled a bunch of quotes out of here. I pulled out of Moonflash. Same thing here. I have multiple versions. I have my original copy. I have multiple versions of this. This is the new one that's combined. It's not my favorite, but it's great because it's combined with both books. So I pulled some out of there. I pulled images mostly. They have these full-size beautiful illustrations, and so that the can also be almost like an oracle card pull. So I pulled from the Pink Fairy book. I pulled from the Zombie Survival Guide, one of my most powerful books, Night by Eli Wiesel. I pulled from the Tao of Pooh, The Soul of the Octopus, the Shaman. I actually have 2 copies of this. One of these I have broken down to get male images out of, to try to make a male version of her goddesses deck. And you can get these used for like $6. And so, I have one that I keep intact and one that I pull images from. So I pulled some images from there. So I had some images. So these are different books that so far I pulled from in order to get the pages that I'm going to show you next. So I was really struggled. Again, Miss Jamie sent me down a rabbit trail. I really struggled with what to put it in, because she'll do her own thing on her own channel of what she ended up doing. But what she was going to use was going to be more. I hate when they do this, when it's like stuck under there like this. What she was going to do was 8.5 by 11 size. I knew I really didn't want that big of a size. I also know, because I do bibliomancy a lot, that I don't really care too much if it lays completely flat, because I pretty much take the pages and go like this, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and then I kind of stop, right? So I knew that as long as I can do that with the pages, it didn't really matter what was binding it. I tried very hard to find like a presentation, where the sheet protectors are built right into it, but I couldn't find the size that I wanted with enough pages in the presentation books. I also tried to find like a 5 by 7 photo book, but again, I couldn't find one. There was one that I thought was pretty close, but I couldn't get it in any time soon, in a timely fashion, and I wasn't 100% sure about it. So then I found this. This actually lays open quite better than I wanted. This to me wasn't ideal, but I do love the outside of it. It just looks like, a lot of the photo albums said photo album or something on it. So I liked the way this looked. And so I was like, you know what? This will do the trick for now. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I'll give it a go. So I got a small binder. So these are the half pages, which also made printing out easy. So these are my pages, and so when I printed things out, it was really easy just to put it on, a page and cut the page in half, and bam, I was done. So size-wise, I really liked this size. And then I got a box of sheet protectors to go into it. I think it says that your this can hold 200 sheet protectors, but I think they probably meant 100 sheet protectors, and it's 200 pages on either side is my guess. So I just got 100 and thought, well, I'll see how that fits. So of course, I have a pair of scissors right here. So yes, I know I'm talking fast. I have to get this project done today, so then I was like, oh no, I need to show these pieces before I put it all together. So I thought, okay, let's get this done. So here are the sheet protectors. Now sometimes, oh good, it's going to be big enough. Sometimes you get these kinds of sheet protectors. Well, we'll see when it's put in. And they will overcast the actual edge of the books once they're in. Now, one person said that it did, another person said no, it didn't. So let's pop one in. I would have rather had matte sheet protectors. Oh good, it's not gonna. Excellent. Yeah, even when they're pulled out. Okay, perfect. I really would have preferred matte ones, and to be honest, I'll continue to look for matte ones, but this is what I could find. Now, I didn't want to be able to see through things because there's different sizes, and so I had an idea because of the photo. I looked at so many photo albums, and so a lot of the photo albums that I liked had a black backer so that you didn't see through to the other side. And so I cut a bunch. We'll see if these are going to have to be trimmed more, but I cut a bunch of black cardstock to slide in. And again, this is extra glary here for you guys because obviously I have my lights bouncing here. But that way, I can put a smaller piece of paper onto the center of this and then slide this in, and you're not going to see through to the back of whatever's on the other side, was my thinking. And so I'll just put like a dot of tape or something like that there to hold it into the center, and then everything is kind of uniformed depending on the page size. Now obviously that's not going to matter for the pages that are full size, but when they're an individual page like this keeps me from being able to see through to the parts of the other side. So yes, right this moment, I know this is very glary for you guys, but when this is not in the light that way, this is actually pretty fine. So I'll mess with them this way for a while, but I will be watching for this. It's hard to find sheet protectors for the 5.5 by 8.5 size, and so trying to find some matte ones would certainly be on my agenda, but then it won't be hard to transfer those over. So now obviously if I were to stick pages in that were already, say, full size, well, it depends. Like if I have a smaller one on the other side, then I would need to keep that middle black one in, which I might want to do anyway so that I'm not seeing text through depending on how thin the pages are. So I might just go ahead and put the black liner in all of the pages. It's going to make for a thicker book, and then I don't know that I'll get the 100 pages, but it's going to make a consistency about the flipping. So I think I'll do that first, is go through and put all of the black liners in and start there and see how many pages I can actually get into this book. Okay, so I think, well, I'm 99.9% sure there's probably 50 in each pack. So I've done 50, and that's probably, I'll probably do enough to, I think I'll need to do 5, it's like 6 more to fit everything that I've already cut out. But I think that's probably, as I don't want to go at any more stuff than that. I'm kind of back and forth. Well, yeah, I just got to go this way. Yeah, I do think that having that, and I know that I could probably get more in if I didn't have this black sheet here, but I really like that it keeps, no matter what kind of page is in here, you know, things would automatically kind of flop and fall differently depending on how thin the pages were, whether they were big pages, whether they were small pages. And so I actually think that the black page protectors are important. But you have to figure this is going to be, well, it'll be 112 because I'll have to take one out. But it'd be 100. It's like a 112 page Oracle deck. And you know, also when you're looking at sort of quote pages, some of them are full pages, but a lot of them are, you know, like this where there's multiple. So that's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on one page, because you're just going to be, you know, flipping and pointing. And same thing with the poetry, you're looking at specific lines. So it actually is quite a large amount of random messages to be able to get. So I think I'm going to hold there. Again, I'll see, start to put these in, and then I'll see then I'll, you know, until I have to add in a couple more extra pages, and then I'll come back and show you what I have. But so far I'm actually really happy with this. It feels good, it looks good. You know, I wish it wasn't a ring binder, sure, but that's okay. It does the job, it does the trick of what it needs to do, and so I'm excited about that. I don't want these to be in clumps, like, so for example, I don't want the poetry or these all to be, you know, I have a bunch of these pages, I don't want them to all be in the same place. So I think I'm gonna make piles of alike size pages and then just be randomly pulling from those, because again, I really want it to be quite randomized. So that will, like, for example, I have I don't think I'm going to use these sideway ones unless I need them. So I'm going to take these smaller things, bits and bobs, and put those there. And then I'll make a pile of these kind of size, and a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. And then just kind of randomly pull from these so that I don't have clumps of the same thing all together, is kind of my thought. Note to self and to you, if you decide to do this, I shouldn't have put all of the black pages in. I wanted to see how many I could get, but I just kind of made myself double, because you kind of, it's easier to just take it out. Even when you're putting the full size pages in, it's just easier to pull it out and then put it in with the items that you're going to put into it. So I definitely doubled up the work, so that if you are going to do this, I would say just put the black backer pages in as you go along. So I'm just, in some of the ways that I picked poetry, or the pages of the books were similar to this, in the fact that I would just kind of flip through and randomly, you know, kind of do bibliomancy on, okay, what are the pages that I'm going to grab. I would literally do bibliomancy on that and just do them randomly. And so I'm trying to put them in a similar way again, so that I don't have clumping. I have more of some pages than others, so you know, there may be some clumping, but I don't really want them to be face to face with the same kind of page. So I'm trying to, that's the only part I'm trying to be mindful about, is that I spread out, you know, so the images, spread out the, you know, smaller pages. I don't have as many smaller pages, and I'm just trying to randomly grab things and put them in that way. So I'm doing a bit of bibliomancy as I put it in, because I think you could get really, or I could, given my Libra brain, I could get really wrapped up in trying to, you know, perfectly grab this, grab that. Like, I have a lot more poetry pages than anything, because I use poetry a lot in bibliomancy. And so I have a lot of pages Those aren't all. Some of those are zombie ones. But I do have a lot of sort of these medium-sized pages. And I don't want to get too caught up because it will take me forever. And the other thing is that some of them that are really small, I have sort of stuck a sticky tape in the middle. But I could easily remove that if I needed to. Mostly they go in pretty easy. Sometimes they have a little bit of a struggle. But, you know, if something stood out by time, when I get it all together, you know, if there is a couple of pages that stand out funky, or I just end up not liking the way a certain page is working, it can be pulled out and removed and put new pages in as well. So I do need to grab like one of these zombie pages here. Range versus accuracy. If I use pages that are a little bit smaller, I can slide them in without taking it out, but not always. Sure, let's have a zombie one with a Winnie the Pooh or the Tao of Pooh. I think those should go together quite nicely. Also, some of these pages that I thought I would have to stick to the page, I haven't had to because I'm using that center thing with the clingy on the outside. It kind of holds things in place in a way that works just fine. So I actually have more of a problem if the page is the exact same size sometimes. Getting it in, like these that I have printed and cut out, I tend to sometimes have a harder time getting in, but you know, maybe I'm just going to get better and better at it as I go through all of these pages. But I did want to point, so you know, I am able to get them in with the black, so maybe putting them all in. Let's see, I did one of those. Let's grab a different book page. And yeah, I'm just going to continue to go about. I wanted to point that out, that I guess it would depend on if you have a lot of smaller ones versus a lot of images. You know, you may want to put the black pages in as you go versus all at once. So you'll have obviously your own. I don't know how I ended up in the middle over there. I'm really loving the way this is looking. I am really, I don't know if you can see. Again, I did pull this away from the lights, and I actually, the clear is not bad at all. It's not as much glare as probably is coming on to just where I'm filming it right here. Okay, that was a bit of a chore, and is now a bit of a chunk here. This is 50 sheet protectors. I did pick it out. Clearly I had cut out more than I thought I had pages. But so then I kind of got everything in, and then I started to go through and try to fill empty space and did some combining. Now I do have this animal energy at the front, which I could take off, and I have it also on the back though with a quote. So I could add a quote, you know, like find an important quote that I like to have here. But I think that there's a lot of times in which, you know, you're not going to end up on the first, so I just kind of like that as sort of a cover page. So I did start to go in and think there were some that I pulled out. You know, like I almost pulled this out, but I actually really like the story behind this. I cut out like some of my own poems and combined it when there was empty space. Again, here I combined actually from a poetry book and some of my poetry. This was one big page with the empty space, so I stuck another poem up there. I pulled out some, you know, some of them I did randomly, and I was kind of like, oh, those I don't really see what I would do with that. I do have, I think I have them all in here now. I do have all my 3 animal energies. A, they're like oracle cards. And B, I just like them kind of having them in the book sort of as a blessing. Just going to quickly flip through this here. Yeah, so here, like I had this smaller image that I really wanted to use, so I stuck another, they don't necessarily go together because it just depends on how I pull it. So some of them are pages. I've combined poems there of my own. I combined a couple things together and almost have a collage-y thing going on there. I combined, I just tried to use blank space where I have a poem, and I also have a piece from the book The Zombie Survival Guide, again book from the Tao of Pooh, and then some quotes here. There's a quote here, a poem here, some quotes here. So I did go through, and here's Raven. So we saw wolf, I have Raven, I put quotes on either side. Mix, what I really wanted in this page were these two things, so I stuck some extra quotes there. And so that way I was able, and I had kind of done this on this, I put 3 poems on one page of my poems, but I just tried to use, and here's Bear, so I have Bear, Wolf, and Raven, so like I could find a really good quote also to put here like I did with Raven, and I could also do that with Wolf, like pull that up and put a good quote here, but they would have to be, I'll have to think about what I would want there, but I did want my 3 animal guardians in there, so they are here. And so I just kind of weeded out a little bit. Some of them were, I just didn't see what I would do with them if they came up. Some of it was making use of blank space. And I could also, like, I know that Miss Jaime, my friend, is, she's using stickers and things as well. So I can start to go in and add some of those, especially on some of these more collage-y. Here it was like one, but then I put another one down here, but I could, even put something across here, and start to, again, just make use of the space, because obviously what is going to catch your attention in the midst of a pull is going to catch your attention, and you're going to just go with that. And then I ended it, so I just kind of gave like a beginning page and an ending page with Susan Sedin-Bolay's artwork. So it is a 50 sheet protector, so 100 pages, but there's quite a lot. These are all separate quotes, poetry lines. There's actually quite a lot that is going on, just in terms of if you compare this to an oracle deck. You're looking at, that's an oracle deck, that's an oracle message. These are all individual messages. That's a message. These are all individual messages. So you start to see where, if I were to count all of these things out, you're looking at, a couple hundred. I would guess you would probably easily hit 200 or more of individual messages that might come out of these 100 pages, if that makes sense. So as an oracle, that's actually quite a lot to pull from. So now what I have is a very, to me, and I may swap some of these things out. Maybe I'm going to find a poem or quote, it's like, oh, that has to go in my book, and I'll have to pick something to pull out and put that in, and it will, I think, just like with a charm set, I was looking at my charm casting set here, that kind of things move in and out until now, all these years later, this charm set is really, really structured to me. I mean, it's always been structured to me, but even more so the more years that I work with it. So I can see that same sort of thing happening here, where things might come in, and if I get a particular thing and I'm like, what am I even supposed to do with that? It's not saying anything to me, then I would just be like, okay, well, I'll pull that out and put something else in its place. So there we have it. What do you think? Is this something that you would try? It's the power of words, and so you can literally just be back and forth, say, okay, what is the message that we need to hear today? Just like when you're doing a tarot reading and you want to pull an oracle at the end of a reading, you can also, kind of have it up up in one hand, although my guess is until it gets, no, it might split. You know, you can be sort of, okay, and then just let it fall, and then put your finger. I try with Bibliomancy to not really be paying attention to the page. So, for example, so here's the hunter. A hunter lives inside my head, and chaos is his name. He feeds on failure and despair. Confusion is his game. If the walls I build hold strong, back and forth he'll pace. But when I look too closely, I see he wears my face. If I'm brave and closer still, my searching gaze I hone. I see not hunter but a soul aching and alone. This is a poem that really speaks about how the prowler and the hunter and that kind of energy is something, you know, in my head. It's going on in my own space where that feeling of being caged is there. But when you go even deeper than that, you'll see there is somebody who is actually truly very alone. When I wrote these particular poems, you know, in 1997, right? But there's a message there that go deeper, look deeper, that a lot of the pacing and the feeling caged that we have in the world, that we feel that in the world, is something that's actually less about what's going on in the world and more about what's going on in our own head. And when you think you have it figured out in your own head, go a little bit deeper and see what is really going on beneath the surface, because there's probably another layer below that. And there you have a message, right? So, and you know, if it's on a page like this, some of these I have highlighted. I'll probably, on some of the straight up text pages, go through if I don't have highlighting and put that there. But otherwise, you can just choose a sentence, right? Stick again. I'm not looking at the book. You can't see my face, obviously, but I'm not looking at the book. I have my eyes closed, or I'm looking up, and I'm just kind of, just like you would be if you're shuffling cards, and then split and, you know, stick your finger. Let it drop and then hit your finger without really paying attention. It's about randomness, just like when you're doing a random you know, when you're doing a random card pull. So I hope that you have enjoyed this. Many thanks to Miss Jaime for inspiring this. If she ever puts up a video on her own experience with this, I will link that in the description box below. But definitely stole this idea from her. And it's one of those things where, you know, somebody says something, you're like, why didn't I think of that? I use Bibliomancy. I use Bibliomancy a lot. Like, why have I never thought of making my own, you know, where it literally is a variety and randomness of different things. I don't know why I never thought about it. So thank you to Miss Jaime. I'm really looking forward to using this. And I'm happy with how it turned out. I'm happy with the size. Again, I didn't really want a full size. You could do a lot more scrapbooking style, like with lots of different things going in with a full page. So I can definitely see where that would be beneficial when I started to do this kind of thing. But I do, in terms of usage for me on my table, I really do like this. I think it's a good size for me. And a lot of my books were similar sizes, and so I am happy with the size of this. And I'm actually really happy with this binder because I can take things in and out, switch things around, and mess with it. So there we go. Hope you enjoyed this. Have a wonderful rest of your day.